Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about emotional intelligence, and the first step is self-awareness. Now I've covered self-awareness before in another video, my first video, which spoke about self-awareness and Johari's window, and that was in the individuation course. But I'm going to come into self-awareness now from a different angle and talk about the attribute that you need to actually have self-awareness. And that would be humility. Now, when you think of humility, you probably don't have a very good picture of it because in today's world, someone who's humble is someone that people probably think they can walk all over and take advantage of, and they think it's a weakness. They think everyone must be proud and strong and never show their weaknesses and never be humble about their strengths. But in the end, it's the people who are humble that end up winning, because in the long term, what matters is resilience, and the attribute of humility actually does help you develop resilience. Because if you are full of ego and you always think you're right and you don't want to admit your weaknesses and you always want to put yourself in the best light and you compare yourself against other people all the time, in the end, that's not going to serve you, because there might come a time where you really need that resilience and you really need to be flexible and you really need to take a good look at yourself and your life. And if you haven't done that and you haven't become emotionally intelligent, you will battle in this world, because there are hard times that happen to a lot of us, if not all of us. So becoming humble might not be very easy if you are someone who doesn't like to look at your weaknesses or admit you have weaknesses, or is too ashamed to look at anything. So you need to really put your shame aside and put all your negative emotions aside and look at the positives of yourself and be humble about what you have accomplished in life and use it to the best of your ability. So if you have self-awareness, you're going to reach a stage where you understand your own feelings. And when you understand exactly what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, and or what you've done and where you could have done better, that's humility. And it helps you to become more flexible and do things better than the next time, find better solutions. So being humble is not about being not acknowledging your strength. It is about having the confidence to let other people shine as well as you, knowing your strengths and not feeling threatened by them. And you can be a very good leader if you're humble, because you are able to let other people shine. And emotional intelligence was first devised by Daniel Goleman, who wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, why it matters more than IQ, because IQ was always the big thing, and people didn't really pay attention to emotional resilience and that sort of thing before. They thought it was airy fairy, as I was told when I wrote my book about emotional intelligence, by some people who obviously did not really feel they needed it. And that is arrogance, and the arrogant people, the proud people, the people who are very egotistical, they typically lack emotional intelligence. And so the first step for that will be humility. So when you have humility, you can actually take a good look at yourself and your behavior and your setbacks and what was your role in it and what can you do better, because ultimately it's about managing yourself and your own emotions rather than blaming everyone else, because you lose your power if you blame everyone else for your misfortunes. Now, if you're still here, um, well done if you're still here, because I know that might have chased a number of people away if they're not ready to develop emotional intelligence. And let me tell you that if you're a person who's a trainer and wants to introduce an EQ course into the workplace, it sometimes is not, still, even in this day and age, it is not received as well as something like, say, the time management was back in the day when time management was a thing. Um, People just want to know how to get the job done, but they don't really look at their staff and see what's actually lying below the surface, which affects the work of the staff and the team that they're working with. It affects them very much what actually happened to them last night or what happened to them at breakfast time. How are they doing? Uh, how are they doing generally in life, and how are they relating to the people close to them, and what is going on there? Because all of that is going to affect your staff. So having emotional intelligence course is a very intelligent um, it's a very intelligent decision to actually train your staff on that. So when we look at emotional intelligence, you look at the intrapersonal, which is people working on themselves, and you look at the interpersonal, which is a whole team of people uh, who are working together in harmony. It really sounds like, it sounds like a lot to ask, but it is possible. The more emotional intelligent the team is, and the more the people have worked on themselves, the better the vibe in the workplace can be. And that is huge in today's environment, because we have all sorts of reports where the vibe is not good because there are all sorts of self-serving people around in the world. So the first thing would be humility. Okay, so that's where you ask yourself a few questions. And as I started with the book, The Rainbow of Resilience, it was based on a weather pattern. And the first element I spoke about was the ice, because it's breaking the ice. Uh, if you don't really break the ice of what is lying below the surface of you, you can't really manage everything else. And that's when you actually identify your feelings, identify what you are feeling, how things are going for you at the moment. Actually take a deep look into that. And if you're facing some conflicts, how were you implicated in that? What could you have done better in that situation? And we all need to ask ourselves that question. How could I have done better? And what attributes do I need to develop? And and that's how we continuously improve our emotional intelligence. So self-awareness leads to self-regulation. And self-regulation is when you take each emotion or each incident and you think, well, what can I do about how I feel about that? It's an ongoing process. And the more you get into it, the easier it becomes. It might sound, if you're not really used to this, it might sound difficult at first, but it becomes a process where you become more flexible as you develop your emotional intelligence. And they say that resilience is the ability to bounce back. So the more flexible you are, the more you can bounce back in every situation, the more you can actually see many angles to the situation. It's not the black and white thinking, as I have mentioned before. You know, if you think just in black and white, you won't develop those solutions. So it's how can I bounce back from setbacks, and how can I develop myself so that it's within me, so that I'm not blaming other people, so that I can do my part. And if I'm against a brick wall where I can't do my part, where people are just impossible around me, then that's also a way of recognizing things and recognizing how you are enabling that, and recognizing, do I want to enable it? What can I do to get out of the situation? And maybe make a plan to get out of it if it's impossible to really improve it, or speak to the people involved. And now I'm kind of alluding to conflict management now. And again, conflict management is something which which would be discussed later in the process of emotional intelligence, because hopefully people will have developed their own personal um, resilience, or their own personal emotional intelligence, whereas when they actually face that conflict situation, they can handle it better. Or uh, even situations in life, real challenges that we come across. How do we handle it? What resources do we have within ourselves to handle it? And that is emotional intelligence. Because if we, say, for example, if we uh, blame everything on, say, the government, although of course the government's not perfect, what are we doing about our situation? I can sit here and say, oh, I'm unemployed because of this and that and the other, and I can't do anything about it. But I have to, I really have to do my own bit towards rectifying my situation, or making my situation better than it is. And one day it's going to work if you carry on doing that. But if you're just sitting on the side of the street doing nothing and giving up on life and despairing, and just foregoing your sense of motivation and sense of self and sense of everything and self, and uh, your will to live, even, what is the point of doing that? So really, being emotionally intelligent, it actually adds some energy to your life, because emotions are energy. And if you're able to manage those emotions and they don't manage you, well, then you're in charge of a lot, and you actually are worth a lot if you're like that, because then you can also handle other people better, and you can handle life better and what it throws at you better. And yeah. um, okay, so you also, in identifying those emotions, the way to do it before you actually are going to self-regulation, which will be the next topic, to identify those emotions, start with the sentence, I feel, and then insert how you feel. Do you feel sad, glad, angry, afraid? Do you feel jealous? Do you feel shame? Do you feel guilt? Write how you feel. Okay, I feel. and then because, identify the reason why you feel that way, and write it in a simple sentence. And if you are feeling an overwhelm of feelings, divide them up. Say, for example, I feel sad because I miss my children. Okay. And then you've actually admitted that, and you can do something about it once you have identified why you're feeling sad. You can admit to feeling happy if you're a person who, for some reason, is not, you don't even want to admit to anyone you're feeling happy, which is a bit strange, but let's say you do. Uh, I feel glad because because I accomplished that, because I was able to go for a walk today, and I feel energized and I feel glad about that. Okay, so it's every little thing that you feel happy about, you feel glad about, you feel sad about, feel angry. Anger is a big one because we may not admit we feel angry, but I feel angry at the boss. So I can't immediately shout back at the boss because I might lose my job, but I could do something. I'm going to take my anger and, okay, so you feel angry, and then you find a way that you're going to release your anger. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go and wash the dishes. I'm going to, whatever it is that releases your anger. I'm going to write in my journal. I'm going to, you think of ways that you release your anger. Okay, and then the more complex ones, of course, are fear and shame and guilt, and we'll get to those ones. But the identification is half the battle won, because you've got to feel it to heal it. And talking about the the medication that a lot of people are on prevents the feeling. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't, because I'm not a psychiatrist and probably some people need it, but it does actually put a barrier between you and experiencing your honest emotions, and perhaps increasing your emotional intelligence and your resilience to life without having a whole lot of things to block it. Another thing would be drugs and alcohol and various other things which you might use to tone down your feelings, which we all have. I mean, I've also been in those positions where, none of us are perfect, but as long as we're recognizing that I'm watching hours and hours of TV because I don't want to think my thoughts. Okay, so this breaking the ice is a bit of a heavy part and a bit of an awkward part sometimes, to actually admit that to yourself. But it is this essential thing. And remember, humility is a strength, it's not a weakness. The way people perceive it might be weak, but then they're not really thinking about true humility. Because really, to admit all things to yourself that you don't want to admit, that's that's part of personal growth. Otherwise, you just will remain the same old person. And then when you're older, it's a bit of a problem. When you're younger, you can get away with it with charm and whatever else you get away with, but you are sitting with yourself for the rest of your life, so you might as well make yourself a likable person. Okay, this talk over here, getting back into emotional intelligence, it's as much for me, because I'm probably going to be the one who benefits from unpacking all this again. After I, I did the individuation course as well, and to talk about it on a video, um, that's a new way of doing it, but it's an essential way of doing it, because it also gets the way I'm thinking out. And I can tell you a lot of this is off the cuff, although I have really studied emotional intelligence in great depth and even wrote a book about it. I still feel like I really need to upgrade my knowledge about it, and also upgrade my resilience, because you can never have enough resilience in life to face the circumstances of this world, because the world changes so much. And then with each new change and each new period and each new version of us, we need a certain amount of extra emotional intelligence. It's just the way it is. So yeah, so it's wonderful if you have a high IQ, but if you can develop your EQ, that would be the real thing, and you would be in demand in a workplace, because some workplaces are really looking for people with those people skills who can relate to people, who are what we call people. I'm not talking about the ones that talk so much that talk the hind leg off a donkey and don't let other people, and they're not really people, although they're the life and soul of the party. We're talking about people who really see other people, who really relate to other people. And this is the first part of the course, which I'm calling the EQ Star. Now, it may sound like this is kindergarten, but the thing is that if you can do this, and you can do this well, and um, remember when you're in school, you got a big star for doing things well. So the EQ Star is definitely one worth striving for and attaining. And by following these, now it's only 5 steps. It used to be a whole lot more when I wrote about it, but yes, there are 5 aspects which are known today, which in the study of EQ, and there are many subsections under them. So self-awareness is what I was talking about today, and in particular about developing the attitude of humility. So well done if you've made it to the end of this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.